Olá, pessoal. Boa noite, bem-vindos. Eu sou a Vitória do EducationUSA na PUC-Rio e hoje a gente vai ter esse webinar sobre mestrado, doutorado, graduate programs com a NC State. So I'm gonna pass on to my colleague Steven now, and e a sessão será em inglês. Go on, Steven.
All right. Well, hello everyone and welcome. I'm excited to be chatting with you guys today. I'm going to pull up my presentation here. So let me share my screen quickly, pull up my PowerPoint and get this thing set up to play. So let's see if I can minimize this and get it out of the way. So like I said, my name is Steven. I am the Director for Sponsored Student Programs at North Carolina State University. I work with our international students from all over the world, primarily those from the Middle East, but I get the opportunity to speak with students from all over the world about NC State and our undergraduate and graduate programs. Today, going to talk to you guys about applying to US graduate schools and how to make yourselves really stand out. I have a lot of things to kind of cover in this presentation. Some of it will be a repetition, some of it will be new. I hope that you find some value in this presentation and that you find something of use to you as you start seeking to apply to graduate school. So let's see if I can get this started. So first, know what you want and know what you need. And so kind of one of the first things I want to touch on here is that before you start doing anything when it comes to graduate school, the first thing that you need to do is really kind of understand yourself and understand what you want and what you need from graduate school. And so what do I mean when I say that? I mean, you need to kind of ask yourself a bunch of questions. I apologize for all the text here, but there's a lot that we want to cover. So which program is the best for you? And why do you think that is the case? What factors are you using to reach that conclusion? Are you thinking about ranking? Are you thinking about program ranking? Are you thinking about connections to industry or research opportunities? So these are some of the things that I think about are some of the things that you should be thinking about when you start identifying which program you believe is the best for you. And then you want to ask yourself things like, how will I choose if I get offers from multiple schools? What if I don't get into my top school or schools? Or what if I don't get into any school? What does that mean for me? What does that mean for my academic pursuits in the future? If you do get in, how can you afford graduate school? What kind of scholarship opportunities, research opportunities, research assistantship, fellowship opportunities are available to you? The biggest thing we're going to cover today is how can you increase your chances of getting admitted? And then similarly, how do you increase your chances for getting financial aid? What if you don't like the program that you get into after you're accepted and have started the program? What can you do? What if you get in and don't like your advisor? What if you get in and have a fellow faculty member who may be a better fit? Can you make that change, and how do you do that? How do you determine success in grad school? There are many ways to kind of measure success, and that can be everything from your research output to being able to get good grades in your classes to finding industry connections. So these are some things you need to kind of think about. And then what do you do if you don't succeed? What if you don't meet your measurements for what is success? And then what kind of external pressures are you facing? Do you have family members that are telling you to do a certain program or a certain field or a certain, go to a certain school? In my case, I work with sponsors, and the sponsors have an external pressure on students as well. So these are things that you really need to ask yourself when we tell you that when we say, you need to know what you want and what you need. None of these questions, or not all these questions, will have right or wrong answers. They're going to be very subjective and very tied to you and tied to your wants and your needs. And these won't always be simple answers either. Some of these will be hard and you'll have to grapple with them. And you may not have an answer until you receive feedback from a school. So just things that you need to kind of think about. So things that you want to consider. So now that you've kind of given some thought to you and yourself, and maybe hopefully have already answered some of these, you can start thinking about the right program or programs for you. So when you start thinking about which program is right for you, start thinking about the long term. What do you want to be doing in 5, 10, or 20 years from now? Do you want to be working in academia? Do you want to be working for a research firm? Do you want to work in a think tank? Do you want to be doing something in industry? So start thinking about that and backtracking to grad school. Which graduate programs can fit or can kind of help you along your path? What skills, knowledge, ability, or mindset will you need getting into your program? If you've taken multiple years off from academia and you're kind of getting ready to go back to graduate school, there's a mindset shift that comes with being in a professional setting versus being in a classroom. What are the pros and cons of different programs and schools? And we say this here, it's not just about national rank or the biggest financial aid package. There are many other factors to take into consideration, one of them being how long it takes you to get your degree. If one school offers you the ability to get in or complete your degree in a year and a half and doesn't give you a financial aid package, and another school tells you it's going to take 2 years and gives you a financial aid package, they could actually be the same cost overall. So thinking about things like that. And then thesis versus non-thesis, just another example. Thesis is the research component and the writing and delivery of a research paper to faculty committee. Non-thesis is generally geared towards practical training and giving you the coursework necessary to enter the workforce. So thinking about things like that. What kind of advisor and mentor do you want to work with? Do you want one that's very hands-on? Do you want one that's going to let you pursue your own passions while working in their research team? And then to kind of wrap all this up, remember that graduate programs are now more fluid than they've ever been. Multiple options for research versus non-research, multiple options to get involved in faculty research, faculty guided research, get involved in committees, get involved in publications or going out and taking part in conferences. So there's a lot of fluidity in graduate programs. And so there are a lot of things to think about when you start thinking about which program is right for you. So other factors that you want to consider, I already mentioned time to degree. Reputation and ranking can be important. Some students want to go to top ranked schools. Remember that there's a difference between a top ranked school and a top ranked program, and those don't always align. Sometimes you can have a school with a very, very high program rank and the overall school ranking isn't as high. So as you start thinking about university reputation and program reputation, just know that there may be a difference there. Are you focused on research? Do you need or want to have access to top research facilities? What's the safety and quality of life like on your campus and in your community? I know this is going to sound silly, but climate can be a big deal. If you don't like snow, Minnesota may not be the best choice for you. If you don't like the desert, you may not want to go to Arizona. Like I said, it sounds silly, but sometimes those can play a factor into whether or not you're going to be happy in the location where you are. So think about that as well. What about proximity to family and friends that you may have in the United States? Is that important to you? And then for a lot of schools like NC State, where our motto is think and do, we want our students to get connected to industry, and we want our students to take on some kind of either internship or get involved in the professional world. You know, what are your job prospects and professional networks like? Do you have access to those kinds of facilities and opportunities in the campus, and are they important to you? Naturally, how are you going to pay for college? University is not cheap. Some programs can run upwards of $70,000, $80,000 per year, depending on which schools you're going to and which programs you're looking into. So kind of thinking about how you're going to pay for it or how it's going to get covered for you is important. And then does the program or does the school offer you the flexibility and ability to change or innovate within your program? And then, like I said before, do you have outside pressure from individuals or family members? So that's a lot. I just threw a lot of stuff at you. So I just kind of put this slide in here to kind of pause and remind you guys to ask questions in the Q&A. We want to know your feedback. We want to know if you have these concerns, if something jumps to mind, we'll try to answer them at the end, but I wanted to throw that out there, just pause for a moment to give you guys the opportunity to catch up and think about where you are right now. So we'll dive into the graduate application. So graduate application consists of many parts. So what makes up a completed graduate application? Generally, it's going to be the application form, which is general information about you, and will include your application fee. Graduate application also includes your transcripts. Since this is the talk about graduate school, it will include your undergraduate university transcripts up to wherever you are now. Or if you are already in graduate school, it will also include your graduate school transcripts to this point. These have to be official. I don't know of a university that will accept unofficial transcripts. Standardized test scores, depending on your program, that's the GRE, the GMAT, the MCAT. Depending on the program, some programs require them, some programs do not. So I really should have kind of made note of that in the text here. You will have to do a language exam. Most do the IELTS exam, the TOEFL exam, and others will also allow Duolingo. I believe there are even a couple of other programs that some universities will accept. So a language exam will be part of that. And then it gets down to the important items here. So the letters of recommendation. Letters of recommendation are very, very critical. These are where people can attest to your abilities. You will also submit a statement of purpose, which is your opportunity to talk about you. This is your opportunity to really sell yourself. We'll dive into some of these a little bit later. And then a resume or a CV, especially for those of you who have past work experience and you want to highlight that, submitting a resume or CV is really important. And kind of highlighted here at the bottom, unlike for graduate studies, decisions to admit you as an applicant are made by a committee of faculty members within your department. So you're not submitting to a group of people whose whole job is to admit students. You are being reviewed by the faculty with whom you would work. So very important to think about this. And it also gives you an opportunity to get a leg up on other applicants. So let's kind of dive into some of these critical supporting documents first. So your letters of recommendation are there to attest to your academic and professional abilities. I encourage you, and I know that many of my peers would do the same, to get letters of recommendation from faculty members that you work with, or from supervisors at jobs or internships that are related to the field in which you're going to study. And this probably sounds silly, but make sure that the people that you are getting recommendations from are people who will say good things about you. It doesn't necessarily, the person doesn't have to have the best title. They just have to be able to attest to your abilities. So when it comes time to request recommendations from people, make sure that you're thinking about who's going to say the best things about you and who can say them in a way that can both draw upon their knowledge or years of experience working with you, and who are going to say good things. The last thing you want is to ask somebody to give you a recommendation and have that recommendation be either poor or kind of so-so, because that's going to say a lot to your faculty members as well. And they take these very seriously. So just be sure that you're asking the right people. And then for me, the biggest one is always the statement of purpose. This is your chance to what we call sell yourself and sell your knowledge, your skills, and your abilities. This is your chance to really, really talk about what you've done and what makes you exceptional. We want you to talk about what your goals are, what your motivations are, what experience or experiences you've had, and accomplishments that you've had. These are things that are going to help sell you as a prospective candidate to the faculty. These faculty take you on and they will serve as a mentor for you, and they want to know that you are serious about the field, and they want to know that you are teachable, and they want to know that you have something to bring to the table. So as you're doing this, find ways and think of ways to make your statement of purpose compelling. And then we always encourage you to have a faculty member or a professional mentor review your statement of purpose. It can sometimes be hard to put yourself out there and kind of have people review these documents, but it can be really, really valuable in making your statement of purpose stronger. And last but not least, have a native English speaker do a review as well. Having a native English speaker review it can help with some of your grammatical mistakes. And while it sounds silly, some faculty will review your material just based on that, or not just based on that, but they will review and they will check for your grammar, because presumably you will be writing papers, you will be writing a thesis or a dissertation, and they want to know that you have the English language background to make sure that you're capable of doing this. So having somebody review that can help you along that path. Your CV or your resume is going to be another very critical document, especially for people or for individuals who have a few years of experience. So being able to highlight your successes and your failures, what you've done, how your professional work is tied to your field, all of that is very important. And then there's usually some kind of supplemental essay, depending on your program. That could be 1 or 2. These are opportunities for you to talk about the field, or it will be kind of a question that they will provide you and you will have to answer that. Sometimes that is, tell us about your experience related to this particular field. Others can be more general. So I don't want to go too far into those, but a lot of programs will offer and require a supplemental essay. So testing, take it seriously. Take all of your tests seriously, especially the ones as you're getting ready to apply to graduate school. So there are a lot of graduate school tests. Like I said earlier, there's the GRE, the GMAT, the LSAT, the MCAT. These are all for different fields. So know which test you have to take. And then a language exam. You'll have to take a language exam. So make sure that you have studied and make sure that you have an idea of kind of where you're going to fall before you take that exam, and know what your school's threshold is. Know what your school expects before you apply. And in some cases, does your school even require one? A lot of schools are getting rid of, or no longer requiring that you take a GRE and submit a GRE score. It is especially true right now during the time of COVID that you don't have to submit GRE scores to every program. So make sure that you know if you have to submit it, and make sure that you are taking that test seriously before you actually sit down and take your test. Study for it. Study. There are lots of websites you can go to that can tell you about how long you should study, how many hours a day, week, or month you should put in, how long you should be studying before you take the exam. And then I always encourage students to test early and test again if you have to. If you take the test and for some reason you perform poorly, don't let that weigh on you. Start over, start your studying again, and take that test again, because sometimes that second test, you kind of get over the jitters of taking a test and you kind of settle in a little bit faster. So test again if needed. So now we get talking about the really important things. So how to stand out in the crowd. You're going to be one of hundreds of applicants in some cases to particular programs, depending on the schools that you're applying to, depending on the programs that you're applying to. You'd be one of many hundreds. So finding a way that you can really stand out in the crowd is going to be critical. So one of the things that we always encourage our students to do is to offer something unique. Most applicants will meet the minimum admissions requirements. So how do you choose between 1,000 different people who all have generally the same GRE score, generally the same grade point average? So this is where it gets down into the details about you. And so you need to do something that makes you stand out. So what makes you special? Think about that for a second. Is there something about you, about your background, about your research history, about your studies that you think makes you special and makes you unique? Let your personality and your passion really shine in your statement of purpose and your essays. this is an opportunity to talk about you and talk about what you love and why you want to study this field. So make sure that that comes through genuinely and honestly in your statement of purpose. And then use your application to share what you can bring to the program. What kind of things can you bring to your research team or to your department? This is kind of like dating in a way. Like, you have to bring something to the table, just like you're trying to get something from the school. You're trying to get a degree. You're trying to get you're trying to get that high ranked school or that particular program. They want something from you too, and so you need to be able to sell yourself in a way as well. So kind of ways that you can stand out. So research experience. Do you have research experience? Have you done, have you worked on a faculty members research team? To what extent? Talk about that. Have you done undergraduate research? If you're still in an undergraduate setting, can you still take part in some undergraduate research? You should talk to your faculty members. A lot of that research will actually tie into conferences and in some cases even publications. You may be the 10th of 10 people on a published or on a research team that gets a paper published, but you still have a paper published with your name on it. That can be really important. What kind of work or industry experience do you have? It's an opportunity. It's an opportunity to talk about where your professional experience ties into or ties into the field in which you want to work. It gets a little bit tricky here, and I don't want to give too much. Most times, work experience, even if it's unrelated, is still beneficial because it still shows your ability to manage your time and still get good grades. It shows your ability to show that you have the work ethic, that you can kind of balance your time properly, that you can dedicate your time to doing something outside of your studies. So work experience can be a little challenging. Obviously, if you have direct work experience, talk about that. Talk about what you learned. Talk about how you can apply that to your master's or PhD program. If you've attended any conferences or given any presentations, talk about those. Those are great opportunities to showcase that you were selected to speak about a field in which you want to study. Any honors or awards that you have, sometimes these can be things like a National Honor Society. Sometimes these can be awarded by your department. They can be awarded by a faculty member. We encourage you to include those. A lot of times those will be included in your CV or your resume, but very important for another way that you can stand out. If you've taken part in a short-term program, like a study abroad program or a summer abroad program or a summer volunteer thing, or if you've taken part in an exchange program with another university like NC State, our Global Training Initiative offers these short-term academic programs, and many other universities do the same. If you've participated in something like that, make sure that you include it. If you've established a business of any kind, even if it's a small one that's out of your parents' home or whatever it may be, and you have that experience, talk about it. Even if it was a failure, we learn best through failure. So make sure that you don't shy away from including that in your materials when you get ready to apply. Sometimes failure can be the biggest teacher. Do you have any teaching experience? Generally, we're looking for formalized teaching experience or mentoring experience or tutoring experience. Not necessarily I mentored or taught my brother or sister on the side, but really much more in-depth, kind of working with either your age students or your age or undergraduate students for teaching experience. And then do you have any special skills or certifications that you've received? Sometimes those can be from things like Coursera. Other times they can be from professional organizations. So if you have these are great opportunities and great ways that you can stand out and that can make you kind of unique amongst the crowd of applicants coming to your program. So a few more ways that you can stand out, and these are very, very important. Do your research on your program, your professors, the curriculum. You shouldn't make your decision about graduate school at the snap of a finger. You should really be focused on these three things in particular. What does your program offer? What makes it unique? Does it match your interests and backgrounds? research your professors. And I mean really research your professors. If these are people that you want to work with, you're going to spend between 2 and 5 years working with them. We want to make sure that one of the best ways that you can make yourself stand out is to get to know who they are, and reach out to them, contact them, ask them about their research, talk to them about your research and your desires. A lot of students are hesitant to reach out to professors here in the United States. I absolutely encourage you to reach out to them. Generally, most professors will welcome opportunities to hear from scholars who are considering their programs. It's a great opportunity for you to build name recognition with professors. These are the people who are going to make the decision as to whether or not you will be admitted. So building that rapport can be critical, and doing that just through kind of researching them. Every professor, and I believe at most US universities, have their own page on the university's website, where they will include their CV, they will include research publications, they'll include classes that they're teaching. So these are opportunities to really get to learn about the people who will make decisions about your admission, and then contact them. And then look at the department's curriculum, find out what the department is teaching, find out what their course content is, make sure that matches with what you want, and then cover all of that in your application. Really highlight those connections with your professors. You can even go so far as to list your professor's name, or your ideal professor or mentor's name, in your application. You can do that. You can choose not to. There are reasons for and not to do so. But if you have a very strong research connection with a professor and your background matches theirs, I encourage you to include that. It's another opportunity to build that relationship. And then apply early. Don't wait until the last minute. There are deadlines both for applications and financial aid. So make sure you apply early. If you could be the best possible student and the absolute perfect fit for a university, but if you wait until the last minute, you may not, the department may not have aid to award you, even though you're the best fit. So the sooner you apply, the better your chances are of getting aid. And then we always encourage students to apply to 4 to 5 programs that you respect. You don't want to put the saying all your eggs in one basket. Same thing with graduate school. You don't want to just apply to one school and say, I'm either getting in here or I'm not getting in anywhere. So look at 4 or 5. Some students will go up to 10. That's a little extreme. Some students will go down to just 2, again, kind of extreme, but finding a few programs where you could see yourself as a student can really help you kind of narrow your focus, and really make sure then that you are doing the research that you need to on the programs, the professors, and the curriculum within that school. Another opportunity to make yourself stand out is to participate in a pathway program. There are multiple options for pathway programs that can range from taking a few years at your home institution as an undergraduate student and then starting a master's program here in the US. We can talk about pathway programs. And I know, Victoria, you probably have a lot of information on pathway programs as well. And then we encourage you to seek advice and information from as many people at your schools as you can. Every school has student ambassadors. Most schools will make an alumni or an alum available to you to speak with. Every school that I'm aware of has an international student club or clubs, and that can range from the Brazilian Student Association to the Latino Latinx community to just the general international student population. Make sure you make connections with them. Learn as much as you can from somebody who's at the institution. Make sure you're speaking to current faculty. And then one that we always like to kind of hint at is talk to the graduate secretary. The graduate secretary is the person who knows everybody in the department. They know all the professors, they know all the research assistants, all the postdoctoral scholars, they know all of the lab technicians, they know everybody. Getting in good with the graduate secretary can go a long way to making sure that you're not forgotten when it comes time for applications, or that they say, oh, but don't forget about this student. They were very nice and they have all these great things in their background. It's just another person that you can get on your side as you're getting ready to apply. And then make yourself known and liked by your prospective faculty and faculty program director. Again, if you just send an email to your professor and say, I'm interested in your research, you don't provide any context, that's not making yourself well-known or liked. That's just you putting your name out there. We encourage you to have a very genuine conversation with your program director and prospective faculty. You will, by the time, depending on your program, by the time you leave, you will be considered peers if you were pursuing your PhD. So think about that and think about how you want to interact with peers and how you'd want to interact with your professors. So those are just some additional ways to stand out. I feel like I've been talking for a long time already. So I have my contact information here, just a bunch of information about specific colleges here at NC State. But now I want to open the floor to you guys. So please feel free to ask questions. Any thoughts or concerns that you have, I'm happy to try to address them. So Victoria, I can I can stop sharing my screen and send it back to you if that sounds good. All right, guys, Victoria, can you hear me?
Yes.
Fabulous. All right, so I covered a lot, and I feel like I went kind of quickly, but there's a lot. So I want to kind of open the floor to questions and really kind of cover things. If students have particular concerns, I'm happy to answer whatever I can.
Mm-hmm. So can I read the questions on the chat box for you?
Sure.
Okay. How relevant are undergraduate transcripts in your grades in it if you got your bachelor's degree a long time ago and in a different area than the one you want to get a master's in?
So I think the importance of undergraduate transcripts will change over time. So if you've been out of university for 5 or 10 years, your prospective school will look at your transcripts a little bit differently than if you're still in your senior year of undergraduate studies applying to graduate school. I think in that case, they're going to look more for professional experience and what your resume or CV has to show for kind of what you've done for the past few years. And then along the same lines, the value of your undergraduate transcripts will change a little bit depending on kind of your grade progression over those 4 years. So a lot of graduate programs are going to look more towards your senior or your junior and senior year, so years 3 and 4 of your university, as kind of an indicator as to your ability to succeed in graduate school. So if you have lower grades in years 1 and 2 of undergraduate studies, not necessarily a deal breaker, especially if your grades have progressed and gotten better over years 3 and 4.
Okay, so Rafaela said, thanks for the presentation. When you say to include things like internships, research experience, and so on, you mean including in the CV or in the statement of purpose?
I mean, both, actually. You should always include it in the resume or CV. That's very important. Ideally, you never want to have a gap in your resume or CV. It's so obviously include it there, and then you can include all of the details of your work, all of your successes and achievements from that position. But then it can also be important to kind of make reference to it in your statement of purpose. You can dive into more detail in your statement of purpose as to how that internship was formative and how that internship helped kind of spur your interest in your field or how it spurred your interest in pursuing a particular area of research. So I encourage students to include it in both. In my own graduate studies, I talked about my professional experience working in international education in the professional field as what kind of prompted me to pursue my master's in international education. And I was able to talk about specific tasks and things from my job that tied into my, my master's program. So I encourage you to include it in both the CV or resume and the statement of purpose where applicable.
Okay, Daniela said, thanks for the presentation. I would like to know if GRE testing has temporarily been waived from the NC State application due to the pandemic.
So for the most part, yes. Again, just like I was saying, decisions are made by the faculty. That also holds true for the GRE and testing. So some of our departments have said it is too difficult to get to a GRE testing center, so you don't have to take the GRE. Other departments have said we still require the GRE. So the most important thing to do is to go to your school's website or go to your program's website at each school and see if they mention the GRE as a requirement. And then again, this is a great opportunity to connect with the faculty member as part of a longer conversation and outreach message to them. You can always just kind of slip that in there at the end. By the way, as I get ready to apply, should I be taking the GRE? Most NC State programs have said, we don't need the GRE this year. We're gonna waive the GRE. But some are still requiring it. So no blanket answer there, sorry.
Okay, so there's one more question now. I had to get the door. Sorry. Okay, do you recommend the CV to be like a regular professional CV, 1 or 2 pages, or could it be a little more detailed? If it's better to keep the CV short, how long could a statement of purpose be?
All right, so that's a good question. So it can change a lot. I encourage students to include a longer professional CV or a longer CV. It's an opportunity to include, if you're going to submit a CV, include all the details that you would include in your CV. I would not shorten it any. Obviously, having things in your CV about what you did in high school or secondary school, not as important. But if you have lots of professional experience and lots of awards or lots of awards or internships and experience like that, make sure you include that. Don't remove anything that may be a benefit to you when you're applying. Include those details and include as much detail as you can. Include all of your successes in that CV. I usually tell students that a resume should be limited to 1 to 2 pages depending on how many years of professional experience you have. If you have less than 10 years, a single page resume should suffice to cover all of your details. Obviously, if you're in academia and you're working in academia right now, you may have a longer CV because you'll have a longer list of research publications and things like that, a longer list of awards or presentations that you've delivered. So it really is contingent upon you and your own background. But with that CV, I suggest keeping it longer. With the resume, which is more tailored towards professional experience, I encourage you to keep it a little bit shorter. And then the statement of purpose, that can vary depending on the department. I encourage you to include as much detail in there as you can. Some try to keep it short to 2 pages. Others will let you go upwards of 4 to 5. I would never go more than 5 pages with a statement of purpose. You just get too long. So the shorter you can keep it, the more concise you can keep it, the better.
We have one more question so far. From Marceli, she says, thanks for your explanation. I would like to ask, when is the best time to start preparing for your application? For example, I'm a sophomore in psychology. Can I start now? Do you have any suggestions about where should I look for programs?
Oh yeah, lots of good things there. So, it depends on what your goals are. So this is kind of bringing it back to knowing a little bit more about you. If your goal is to start a PhD versus a master's program, if your goal is to get into more clinical work versus more if you're thinking more like business psychology or industrial psychology. So there are lots of potential avenues for when you should start. If you're thinking of starting immediately after completing your undergraduate studies, I would encourage you maybe next year during your third year to start looking at programs and start narrowing down programs that match your areas of interest. And once you kind of narrowed that list down to, like I said, maybe start narrowing it down to 10 and then start looking into the details of those programs. If you're looking at particular rankings, if you're looking at access to financial aid, or if you're looking at access or industry connections, then you can kind of narrow that list down to your 4 or 5 before you actually submit your application. Most universities will open their applications sometime in late summer or early autumn here in the US. So anywhere from August to October. Generally, I would encourage you to submit your application no later than January if you want to be considered for some kind of financial aid, like a scholarship or a fellowship or an assistantship, either research or teaching.
Okay, that was the last question.
Okay. I was going to add one more thing. I think graduate school is a lot of fun and can both be very exciting and a very scary prospect as you get ready to start applying. Don't let it be. You kind of naturally inclined to be worried about, am I going to get in? Am I going to find myself at the right program? These are really important things to consider. But remember, kind of do what's right for you. And if it doesn't feel right, then, you don't want to spend the time and the money on it. If it is right for you, you will know kind of early. It'll feel right. The people will feel right. The faculty will feel right. You'll feel at ease. So there are lots of things to consider there. But it can be a lot of fun. Exhausting, but a lot of fun.
Well, you just make me want to apply to grad school now.
I've been thinking about going back for another master's degree in a completely different field just for the fun of it, because it's like, why not?
For the fun of it. Okay.
It's, you get a couple of extra gray hairs now and then, but it's worth it. I mean, kind of continuing your education is valuable regardless of age and experience level. And I encourage you to do it if you can and if it's right for you.
Definitely.
And I had my email address there. If I can include it in the chat section, if that's right, Victoria. And then, feel free to reach out with questions too. I'm happy to answer general questions about applying to graduate school. Part of the fun of my job is I get to mentor students and prospective students. So be happy to do that for you guys as well.
Yes, include that in the chat function, please.
And then, if you guys think of any questions later on, or you don't want to ask the group, you can always just send them to me directly later on too. But would love, I think it's very valuable. So if you do have more questions, I would love to hear them, and they can help your fellow students as well.
Yes, that's true. I guess everyone made very good questions here. I was actually curious for some of the answers.
Yeah, they're great questions. And really important and important ones to think about. And, you know, it can kind of feel like you're splitting hairs, so to speak, but it can be really important to get just an external person's feedback on kind of what you're thinking, and just kind of get somebody to confirm or deny what you're thinking.
Yes.
Well, if you guys don't have any more questions, you're going to leave me to go back to worrying about the election. So ask more questions.
This was a fun distraction, right?
I've had my television on the news all day, so being able to chat with you guys is far more fun than, you know, constantly checking CNN or something.
Okay, there's one more question. Do you recommend a website where we can look for financial aid resources?
Oh, that is going to be dependent on the type of program you're in. So we actually have a whole other presentation on financial aid and resources and things like that. So I think there are a few things. So there are departmental offered programs like research assistantships and teaching assistantships. And in those cases, you are awarded aid by your department. And in the department, they say, you will do this research, you will join this research team in exchange for the department covering this portion of your tuition or all of your tuition. And that's the same thing for teaching. And then there are fellowships that are awarded by, fellowships or scholarships awarded by the college or the university itself. And those will be decided kind of, those fellowships are usually merit-based. And they will say, if you stay at this school for X number of years, you will get this aid for every year during that time. And then there are externally awarded fellowships and scholarships. And those can come from a whole bunch of different sources. And that's where it gets a little bit harder. So you can get awards from places like the National Science Foundation, but you may also have really, really kind of disparate places to find these scholarships. I can't think of any place off the top of my head that has a full list of these. You can check places like Idealist. They may have some scholarship opportunities there. But Victoria, I may actually defer to you on if you're aware of a place that has a full list of possible graduate scholarships or fellowships.
Yes, so as you said, Stephen, the primary source should be, of course, the family, and then the program which the person is applying. So just ask the department what are the options. And then there are some external sources. So an example would be AAUW, which is specific for women, but it is a good resource. And for loans, we always mention the Row Fund for international students. And there are a bunch.
OAS Row Fund.
Yes, it is a good alternative if you consider loans. And then there are a few other options, but they might be specific for programs, for areas of study. So just reach out to us, to Education USA, and we will help you with that too.
Seconded. Absolutely agree.
Okay, so Marceli made another question. Should I include internships that not exactly fit with the programs that I want to apply?
I would still include that in your CV or your resume, but you probably don't need to cover it in the statement of purpose because it's not going to add there's no direct value shown between the internship experience and the field for which you're applying. But I would still include it in your resume or your CV because it still shows your experience, and it still shows, you still have the opportunity to kind of highlight your successes and things that you've achieved in that position, and kind of the skills that you've gained from that work. So I think it's still valuable, especially like a great example is if you work for, we can talk about here in the US, if you use if you join an election campaign and you start using like SPSS, the statistical packages for the social sciences, you may not your job may not, or your field that you're going into may not have a direct correlation to political science. But if you need that kind of skill set of using SPSS, you can still highlight that as I have this skill that I gained from this outside employment that's unrelated. So it can still be valuable, just maybe not in the statement of purpose.
It looks like it's the last question now.
All right. Well, I thank you guys. It's a pleasure chatting with all of you, sharing a little bit more. And like we said, it's a nice distraction from election night coverage.
We're glad to distract you.
I am too.
Thank you so much, Stephen. This has been very helpful. Even though we had a session that was similar a while ago, I did learn new things from that other presentation. The perspective was different. And also, as I said, we had great questions. So it was amazing. And we will upload the session to our YouTube channel. So I will be sending you the link, and everyone that is here, if you missed any parts, if you missed the beginning, or if you had to leave for some reason, you can find it on our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com/EducationUSA Brazil with an S. Okay, so bye everyone. Thank you for coming. Thank you, Stephen. See you later.
Bye everyone. Thank you all. Thank you all so much. Enjoy the evening, and good luck on all your future endeavors and future applications. And I hope that one day we run into one another somewhere, whether in Brazil or up here in the United States. And best of luck.
Best of luck, guys. Bye, everyone.
Bye.